as dancers, and those who came as married women. So you see all these it's crazy. But I saw all of those, and then there is this narrative that now, because of what these later women have done, now Swiss men are wise, and they are not going to fall into just marrying a Dominican woman. Plus, the Swiss government has changed everything. Dominicans who came in the 80s, if they marry a Swiss immigrant, I'm sorry, not a Swiss, because citizenship in Switzerland, you have to be Swiss, or one of your parents have to be Swiss to be called Swiss. But let's say if you marry a Swiss citizen, you will immediately have a C permit, which is the one everybody aspires. You can be a permanent resident, and you can easily apply for citizenship. That was in the 80s. So in Switzerland, if any citizen of the world marrying a Swiss could become a Swiss citizen easily. And if you marry somebody who lived in Switzerland and was an immigrant, and you came to Switzerland and married this person, automatically, this was before the mid-80s, you would take that, your husband's, which is a gender thing, and Swiss feminists fought this a lot because it did not work the other way around with Swiss women who marry. They didn't automatically have this immigration status of their husband like women did. But all of that has changed. So the Swiss government, this marriage is not an easy thing now. I'm going to marry you. So whether I want to play or trick a Swiss man, the Swiss system has put things in place that is very difficult to have fake marriages and things like that. Okay, and I'm going to have to move a little bit quickly. So these are some of the three larger questions about belonging that I have, but today, especially now, I won't have much time. What time is it?
It's 12:30.
And that's time for this?
Yeah, so take 5 more minutes and just...
Yes.
Since we did the Q&A, you can take...
Yes, I think we've talked about the things that I was to, but so we can talk about belonging. It's a multidimensional concept here. It's about feelings and experiences of connectedness, level of identification that an immigrant have with the host society and its members. Another, part of that is, how do you feel that you are at home in the country you are residing? Do you feel you are accepted? Do you feel like you are part of society? So the concept involves like different little things with just one meaning. It is another definition here that exemplifies the multidimensionality of the concept, emphasizes experiences and emotions of inclusion and the practices that express that inclusion. So belonging is also about whether you feel discriminated or not, that you are part of, et cetera, et cetera. So it's about emotions, feelings of attachment, and all of that. So in this study, this is like a summary. Belonging is defined in terms of how Dominican immigrants describe fitting in Swiss society, how they think the Swiss majority view them, their sense of well-being, satisfaction, and how they feel they are treated by the majority group. Is defined in terms of emotional attachments, individual identifications, and perceptions of lived experience. So it's like a combination of all the things that those definitions suggest. This is the data very quickly here for this particular project. I have completed 100+ interviews, but this is just the first wave, the data that I'm presenting here. I conducted 37 semi-structured in-depth interviews and 5 focus group interviews of 5 participants each with first-generation Dominicans in different Swiss cantons. Aside from the interviews, I did field work, of course, participant observation at different events, from mass, birthday parties, dinners, political meetings. Dominicans are very active politically everywhere they go. And I remember when I was there was this political, it was like encuentro político. How would you say like encuentro político? It's like there was a European meeting this was of the PLD, the incumbent party in my country, and they had a meeting in Milan. And there were Dominicans that came from across Europe, and I was able to go, and there were like hundreds of Dominicans from Belgium, the Netherlands. I lost, I'm already a skinny person, and I lost I don't know how many pounds because it was like no stopping anywhere. In this particular sample, this reflects this the Swiss population in general in the DR, which is about 75% female. In my sample, 71% female, 29% male. 78% of women in my sample came from the countryside or the provinces, and 22 from the capital. You can ask me later about the sample, and I'm just going to move quickly here with methods, and you can ask me about that, how I analyze the data. But when I ask students, about these students, interviewees, about those questions, and after, I did a process of coding, etc., everything that goes with grounded theory, there were 5 major themes that emerged, to sort of describe those experiences of belonging, a sense of difference and social distance, a sense of struggle and resilience, stigma, pragmatic rootedness, and racism. And I'll give you just an example with a quote from a respondent just to exemplify what it is that the theme means. And this is from Alex from Neuchâtel. And Alex arrived in 1990. Obviously, what this means, this is just an example of interviewees that convey this sense of difference and social distance in explaining, their feelings, emotions, attachments, and all of those things about belonging. The Swiss is Swiss, and the foreigner is a foreigner, period. It does not matter if you've been here for many years. I've been here for almost 20 years, so I can tell you how it is. The Swiss are very different. They are special. They don't like what we like, and they don't get together as much as we do. We like to get together and have a good time. We like to dance and listen to music to keep the spirit happy. We're happy people. We are loud. We laugh and talk at the same time. We talk and laugh and yell. We don't mind noise. We are loud and spontaneous people. We don't mind being late. That's a big no-no in Switzerland. Oh, I have stories about that. The Swiss are about discipline and respect, and you are screwed if you don't understand that. You will end up in jail or back home in Santo Domingo because Switzerland will drive you mad. It is a mission impossible for a Dominican to try to adapt to Swiss culture. You have to be really brave. It is impossible to fit in. This was a theme that repeated over and over in different ways, that the Swiss are one way, Dominicans are one way, and you can reconcile the two. And so we are very, very, very different. So as part of their experiences of belonging, you have this, yes, we are here, yes, but the Swiss are Swiss, and that's a different word from us. That's just to give you an idea of that particular theme. The other theme was sense of struggle and resilience, and this is Isabel from Lucerne. Our lives are very similar here. We are Auslander. When many immigrants complain about that in Switzerland, that you see this German, that they say that people tell them that at the train station, it's like foreigner, right? It's like yelling foreigner. It's like, here that would be like a racial slur considered, right? But in Switzerland, obviously, it's not a racialized society in the way that we are here. So race works through different means, including, through the nationality, what your nationality is, and your immigrant status. Our lives are very similar here. We are Auslander, even if you had a Swiss passport. We don't speak German or French when we first arrive. It is real tough trying to find a job without knowing the language, and also because the type of documents many of us have when we first arrive limit what you can do or for how long. Many of us come with an L permit and get a B permit when we marry a Swiss citizen, and things become a little easier with a B permit. In general, we just don't get used to live lonely, to be focused on ourselves only, to not have relationships with our neighbors, to not being able to openly be Dominican. That's a big thing because in Switzerland, ethnicity has to be private. You are not going to see Turkish this, or Mexican that, or Mexican flags, or Dominican. Ethnicity has to be private because they use the assimilationist model, not the multicultural model. I was telling Keith last night, Rachel, that I went to this West African festival in Bern. That was in my last trip, and I was so excited. Western Africa, from all countries from West Africa, food and music. And I actually had to take the train because I was in Neuchâtel. And I go there, and it's 1 hour. And they have 1 hour, I have to put up with 1 hour of Swiss music first, like traditional music, which was great. I mean, it's cultural for me. But it's like, you want to see the West African thing, but first, here's 1 hour of Swiss stuff. Which I'm not saying is bad or good, I'm just sort of giving you a detail of how, I mean, ethnicity has to be private. So here is this, Isabel is kind of thinking about, I think Dominicans in that's a typo, in New York can have lives similar to how they live in Santo Domingo. She's like yearning for Dominican New York, because in Switzerland that would be not be possible, right? This is why we get together from time to time and organize parties and drink beer together, just to help each other carry this burden. We come here pursuing a dream to get a better life, and we have to keep going. We can survive anything. We are strong people. So this is not very similar from the previous theme, because it emphasizes struggle and difficulties. But I heard that a lot. It's like, yes, there's a struggle, but we are strong people. We come from whatever, and we are still here. We came here. It's like we are strong people. There are a lot of stories about weather. In this example, they don't mention, but how Switzerland is cold, and like for almost the entire year you don't see anybody and you live lonely. And we are from the tropics, but. So I think there is this sense, that's why I name it, sense of struggle, but also resilience. We are strong people, we came from afar, but we are still here. We can deal with this, basically. Whatever it is, it's tough, it's hard. The Swiss may be from Venus, from Mars, and we may be from Venus. But we are strong, we are here. A nosotros nadie nos mata. It's like, it's like Dominicans are strong.
And what do they say about their offspring, the children?
Oh, the children is a very interesting story of what's happening with the children. There are different kinds of children and different realities. Those that were born in Switzerland, who, by the way, are only Swiss if one of the parents are Swiss, because they are not automatically Swiss just by being born in Switzerland. And they are those who came through reunification. And I see different situations going around that, okay? I'm going to leave it there to continue, and then in Q&A. So stigma was the other one, prostitution, drug dealers. And according to interviewees, this came more after the year 2000, when a couple of cases of Dominican drug dealers were in the news, and et cetera, et cetera. But this is very important. I'm not going to read the whole thing because Rachel is going to come and grab me. But this is very important. I was confused with being a prostitute in my first trip. Oh my gosh, yes. Because I was taking a lot of taxis. I was doing a lot of interviews from point A to point B. And in Switzerland, you really have to be careful with time. They are not, and even Dominicans there, because they live they have to be constrained with time. I cannot, if I play with their time, they are going to be late for something. So I was taking a lot of taxis, even when Swiss transportation is out of this world, right? It's good. And I think eventually I noticed that these weird interactions with taxi drivers, and they would look at me and pass me their cards, and it's like, are you going to call me and all that stuff? And it was just when one guy directly asked me for my services, that's when I realized, now I understand what's going on every time I call a cab. And these guys because Swiss are not supposed to be that expressive or that, and I'm like, what's going on? And then I understood. He thought I was giving services. I was delivering myself to people. Because, if you look like me and they think, you are not from Africa, from West Africa, and they identify Dominican women like that, particularly in the German-speaking cantons. And immediately, if you are Dominican, you are a prostitute. So I lived through this. So men, drug dealers, and people who are like partygoers, just about partying. Pragmatic rootedness also deals with struggle. But this is different from the strong one, in which, as you saw in this one, yes, there are all these struggles, but we are strong people. Nadie acaba con los dominicanos. Los dominicanos somos unos hijos de puta que nadie, ni los suizos pueden con nosotros. They tell you that, right? This one is similar about the struggles, but it's more like, this is very pragmatic. I may be going through all of this, and you can read while I speak. but I came here because I wanted to build my mom a house. I came here because I wanted to give my children the opportunity to live a poor country. I came here because of very pragmatic things. So that was also part of the narrative. And of course, there's racism. Racism is another theme. And you can read here, just this came mostly also in the German part of Switzerland. Well, most of my interviewees are from that part of Switzerland, so not a surprise there. But that people scream at you about, go Auslander, what are you doing here? A lot of incidents also, you ask about children in schools. Let me see if I have something about schools. Our children will be sent directly, lots of complaints from mothers that see if they feel like I'm telling you what they are telling me, right? It's not the accuracy or inaccuracy, it's how they convey their experience. And this was a lot of complaint about their children, never being very dissatisfied with the educational tracks of their children. And they say, they feel it's discrimination, that they are always putting tracks to be like, panaderos, artisan, like those kind of occupations as opposed to professional occupations. Because their educational system is very different from here. The discussion and conclusions, I have my notes and pages, but I think I can just say that. But, I'm just going to read maybe the first paragraph, the first sentence, I'm sorry. That in general, what my preliminary findings show is that experiences of belonging are anchored within specific social relationships and individual biographies, that they reveal the centrality of social hierarchies in experiences and inequalities in experiences of belonging. Respondents draw from inequality themes to create cultural meanings, especially to express a sense of shared lived experience and personal and group identity. These findings also confirm that boundaries are implicated in processes of belonging. Many interviewees seem to have internalized the boundary around the foreigner category operating in Switzerland, and they drew essentially cultural, personality, and psychological distinctions between Dominicans and Swiss, and at times between Dominicans themselves, et cetera, et cetera. And I think I'll stop there, but sorry that I run out of time.
There might be a few more burning questions, and you should feel free to get up and get food if you want. We have the room. So, you see Elisa and then Christina, Dr. Barton-Santos, and then Dr. Sis.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Really interesting, and I think you're right about always having to kind of look at migration through a comparative lens, because there are so many, and perhaps some of the struggles that we see with Dominicans in Switzerland are some of the early struggles of, for example, Mexicans, Mexican Americans. Really the tracking, the school tracking, and all of that comes to mind. But my question is just, I wonder in the trends that you found, the one that you coded as sort of struggle and resilience, whether you're thinking about political identities, right, and the ways in which belonging is politically shaped by law and public policy itself, right? Mm-hmm. Because really, that's the narratives that they're telling, right? That's the excerpt that you gave us, where they're talking about how policies, how visas, how documents, and these political discourses are shaping their identities, right, and thus shaping their experiences of belonging. So those when we talk about immigration and migration in the United States, it's come to go hand in hand, right, with the sort of the ways in which we shape socially, culturally think about our experiences in immigrants in the United States, but also how their identities are politically formulated and constructed and mandated, and how that also affects their sense of belonging.
That's a great question. You were talking about the politics of belonging, right? Yeah. Because there's a whole scholarship on the politics of belonging. But first, your question about Dominicans and political engagement, which you asked, right? Am I right?
No, I think I'm just asking about kind of how you, as a scholar, are analyzing, right, that data, right, which you code as struggle and resilience. But I wonder if you also include a language of how political identities are also political categories, right, that are constructed through policy.
In my theoretical framework, I frame this study as a case study of inequalities in the context of migration. So to me, belonging is a political realm in itself, because there is the individual dimension of how a Dominican immigrant describes herself or himself and how they or how she fits within the context of Swiss society. That's an individual dimension, but there's a structural dimension, there's a policy dimension, there's a political dimension. And in Switzerland in particular, the boundaries of Swissness, of who is allowed to be Swiss, is through basically the naturalization process. It's the key one. And that's why you have in Switzerland 3rd and 4th generation Portuguese people who are not Swiss. 4th generations. So it is the case study per excellence. Germany used to be sort of the case per excellence to illustrate how the politics of belonging operate, right? No, Germany changed a little bit in the 90s, and now Austria and Switzerland continues to be the examples, at least in Western Europe. It is very clear that the Swiss state has, through policymaking, particularly through the manipulation of citizenship and naturalization law, to have a very clear line of who's Swiss and who isn't. And of course, what I couldn't read my whole findings, but to me, the experiences of belonging of Dominicans really intersect clearly with the dynamics of inequality in Switzerland that are grounded into, here is race, but in Switzerland, who's a foreigner and who isn't? Who is Swiss and who isn't? It's like the axis of inequalities, because that influences educational tracks. It influences everything. So of course, to me, this is a project about inequalities in the context of migration. I just pick belonging in a way sort of to get to that, because it's something that I think is relevant given the case study that it is. But the Spanish case has its own things going that are a little bit different because it's a different context. But of course, belonging is political. That's why belonging is a dimension of integration, right? It's like the hot potato politically in Europe right now. It's really about integration. Who's integrating, who is not, and then governments are making decisions. And citizens also, their identities are really turned on and turned off by this, right? Who's integrating and who isn't, and who's worthy to be allowed into whiteness like we did before, right? And who's going to be allowed to belong to the Swiss pie. It's a political process, and the society is really, there are struggles about this right now. In Switzerland, they had a referendum recently. In 2004, they had a referendum. I tell you, they vote for everything. And in 2004, there was a proposal to loosen citizenship requirements for the 2nd generation. And they lost. For second
born
in Switzerland.
in Switzerland.
Yes. And now, actually, earlier this year, they started conversation. They might put something for a vote later this year or early next year for loosening now for the 3rd generation. So I think politicians are pushing, maybe we'll get something for the 3rd generation, and then let's see where we go from there. But that tells you right there, it's really who's going to be allowed to belong, right, to Swissness.
The criteria of belonging.
Exactly. And I don't know what's going to happen, but imagine, these are 3rd generation people, and they are considering loosening naturalization requirements for 3rd generation people. It's very political. And Swiss right-wing parties in Switzerland are among the oldest in Europe. And they have been the most active since the end of the Second World War. Very silently, it's just we don't hear a lot about Switzerland. And they are very powerful. I was going to show you some things, some pictures, very powerful right now. They are winning seats, and this issue of Swissness is key.
We're having a similar conversation in this country.
Yes,
Very
absolutely.
similar. We have one last question.
And then we'll have that workshop, right? At what time is at 1, right?
1:30.
Christina.
Usually when we talk
Thanks
about
everyone, and thanks for your wonderful questions.
No, deja de ser cariño.
we talk about push-pull as a binary, right?
Yeah.
But I kept thinking that a factor undoubtedly has to be U.S. immigration policy and it's
Absolutely.
tightening.
That's trade cost. That's definitely there.
Yeah, okay, because I was like,
First, there were opportunities that opened up in Europe, right? Spain because of restructuring the Spanish economy, they wanted domestic workers and construction workers. And Dominican women and Dominican men took advantage of that. But given a choice, I guarantee you, because in surveys you see that, they would rather come to New York, to the US, than go to Europe.
right,
But, as you said, that is part of that process. You know, my last visit there, I want to do migration pathways. So I collected 30 life histories of, not in depth, but I wanted some cases for me I wanted to have like complete migration histories. From when did you ever thought for the first time that you wanted to leave the country to what you are doing now here in Switzerland? And I'm going to use those to sort of develop those pathways because migration, you are very right, Christina. This is just to simplify the conversation, but migration, we have moved from the push-pull as the only way to look at this, right? More than pathways and things.
maybe there's another level of push in this case, right?
Absolutely. So, great question. Definitely not being able to come to the US.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.